good afternoon, namaste. And after that session, trying to talk about climate change and net zero and technology and keep you entertained and up after lunch is going to be very hard, but we're going to try, right?
Yes, yes.
And fortunately, I have two very good speakers with me, so we're going to try and make sure that we give as much inputs as possible. One thing that poll missed, by the way, when it asked the question of why do you think CEOs are focusing on sustainability, it talked about regulation, it talked about, I forget what it was, and it talked about bleeding heart. What it really missed is that there is business opportunities in it, right? That there is an ask from our consumers, there's an ask from our own employees to be sustainable, and a study has shown that organizations that do follow ESG norms perform 2.6 times better in terms of return to shareholders than equivalent organizations in the same sector, and that's data. So that would be the reason to really try and get your net zero targets in place, right? Now, sustainability is a big topic, and it's really broad. What we are going to focus on here is really how do we use technology to reach net zero targets? What can we do in a room full of technologists? I think that would be a good topic. So let me start. If I can get this up. And there are multiple interventions that can happen, as we know, right? And what I want to do is start with you, Lina, because Denmark is a front runner, as we all know, in global climate action, and you've taken a number of policy measures. Could you talk to us about that? Why did you start, and what have you done in terms of using technology specifically to accelerate the journey?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me, Rekha, on this panel with Katie. I think if I may just take one step back, I think what has happened in Denmark actually since the 80s, where we started the work towards the sustainability transition, we've actually managed to double our economic growth, our BNP, a couple of times over the decades, while we've only increased our energy use by 6%, and in that same time we've actually decreased our water resources. And I think that's part of the story and the solutions to the action and the initiatives that Danish government has taken over the years. Part of that is also to ensure political stability, a government ambition to set the bar high. We have an ambition of being net zero in 2045, it is now. And I think we've come very far with the energy transition itself. Now comes the hard stuff. Now it's about reducing the footprint in more difficult sectors. In my country, it's the food and agriculture, it's the infrastructure, it's the transportation. And in order to achieve that push, it's in no doubt in my mind that we need a technological push in order to advance that. So from my perspective, the sustainability transition goes hand in hand with digitalization, which is also why we are here in India.
Okay, thank you. So what you've reconfirmed that besides making business sense, it also makes economic sense for government and political sense for government to move on the path of sustainability. And Katie, I want to bring you in here. Johnson Controls has a huge history of creating safe, sustainable spaces. And as you're working on smart buildings, what are the big shifts that you're seeing in the circular economy overall? What are the big shifts from your vantage point that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, thank you. And it is an era of incredible shift. I think you captured some of it in terms of that poll where we now see multi-dimensional reasons as to why enterprises are getting into this space. So at Johnson Controls, as you said, we are a pure play sustainable building technology company. And the good news, bad news in buildings is that as we gather to talk about climate change, buildings are 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions globally, and true story here in India as well. So what does that open? The flip side of that is that there's enormous opportunity when we put buildings front and center and we bring technology to bear. And Rekha, there's a trifecta of technology that really changes this equation. It's about efficiency, but then it's about electrification, and for this gathering, it's about digitalization. The big revolution coming to buildings is data. Buildings are the least penetrated sector in terms of the information revolution left buildings behind. You think of your car as a computer on wheels, not so your building. But now, with digital platforms that sit over operating systems, you're cutting energy use by 50, 60% and unleashing the strategic functionality of the building. The building goes from a dead weight on your balance sheet to literally a smart battery that can talk to the grid. So it's game-changing. People want in on that as compared to what are the regulations I have to follow.
I agree, and we are excited with our collaboration where we are co-deploying a platform which will help consumers, help customers automate and make their buildings smarter. Lina, given your experience, what are some of the ideas that have worked for Denmark that the world can learn from, right? What are the systemic changes that you made, which actually also helped tech adoption at scale? And notice I keep bringing back to tech because we are in a technology conference.
Yeah. Is this on? Or yeah. You know, I'm a little hesitant representing a country of 5.8 million people telling you all what to learn from us. However, I do hope that it can serve as inspiration as to how we have been handling those challenges. Because a challenge-based way of looking at it has been how the Danish government had handled it. A couple of years ago, we established 14 different climate partnerships consisting of government officials and private partners, companies, research institutions, and university representatives, discussing 14 different themes and advising and coming up with specific recommendations to the government as to how could we reduce the CO2 emissions for these industries, being transportation, defense, the maritime sector, etc. So I think this challenge-based idea, but also the fact that gather the ideas from the ecosystem and from the various partners, have them come up with the solution, have all of you in the room to come up with the solution and advise governments on how they can take this forward. Now, all that being said, after that, governments are then to choose from a catalog of initiatives and ideas, and I'm not sure I can promise you all that everything will be taken care of, but at least you get the solutions to some of the challenge on the table, and that has indeed helped our transition and sort of this thinking out of the box going forward.
In fact, you're right, because a lot of the CEOs, we did a study along with WEF, which said that a lot of the CEOs feel that they are hampered in meeting their business resilience and their ESG goals because of lack of support from the government, from lack of policy support from the government, from lack of incentives from the government. And Denmark has been at the forefront on both, right, in terms of both doing incentives. Are you doing any special incentives in that space when you collaborate?
So, you know, back in the 70s, when we pushed the renewable energy sector, it was indeed financially incentivized. It's not anymore. Now it's driven as a business. We are, in these processes, a little careful with financial incentives as its own. However, what the government is offering is access to a number of data and tests that we store from various, it could be a mapping of wind flows or our healthcare data or other ways to sort of intensify the collaboration between government and private partners.
Okay. Okay, back to technology, because we know that, it can accelerate sustainability efforts, right? We know that, whether it's net zero transaction or sustainable value chain, or in helping measure what the changes are, helping map ESG goals, and supply chains, which account for 60% of global emissions. Actually, buildings account for 40%. So actually, that takes care of 100%. How do we go to more than that? But anyway, where digital twin technologies can help. So I wanted you to speak specifically in any of those tech innovations that you're seeing in your space or broader.
Yeah, 100%. And the big innovations are twofold. In this electrification space, what that enables us to do is to back out the burning of fossil fuels in a building for hot water or for heating a space, and it's just vastly more efficient. So those are heat pumps when you're electrifying those operations. But the big game changer, again, is data. And let me give you an example or two here, because I think, Lina, it goes to your point that you just made so well, that things that you used to have to subsidize because they seem like something that is a drag on the basic business that someone is engaged in, becomes fuel for that business. So as an example, we at Johnson Controls for 140 years have been making efficient operating systems, the HVAC systems. Now imagine, though, that HVAC system that currently can't hear or see data from any part of the building. It might be efficient, but it is not informed. Now, lay a digital platform over that, and that efficient operating piece of equipment now is hearing from the security system on the 4th floor. There's nobody here. So you dramatically pull back. There's no need to blow cold air in that whole floor. Now imagine that same operating piece of equipment can speak to the electric vehicles that are in the parking lot, or speak to the solar that's on the roof. Then that building that's a cost center becomes a revenue center, able to grab and monetize that electricity and sell it to the grid during peak periods of electricity pricing. The last thing I'll share, just again, a tangible example where these issues go from nice to have to must have, and from feel good to business centric. So imagine you're a hospital. If you're a hospital, you've got big energy bills, and sure, you invite Johnson Controls in because we can cut your energy bill and make you more efficient. That's nice. But if you have something else going on, you might say that waits till tomorrow, because your mission is patient wellness. But what if, through a digital platform, you have smart windows that talk to the sun? Those windows save you energy, but here's what else they do. It means that you don't need curtains in that hospital room. Curtains are germ magnets. When you cut that source of energy consumption, you are eliminating hospital-acquired infections, and you're making Mrs. Mukherjee healthy faster. So now we've gone from the periphery to being at the heart, the strategic reason of the organization. That's what building technology is starting to bring to bear.
Which is just wonderful to hear for this audience. Data, technology, and that all at the heart of anything that we do in order to move to sustainability. Now, we know that at the heart of most innovations are startups, right? And we need to encourage them. In India alone, just for example, in 2021, there were about 37 billion VC investment in climate tech alone, right? And we need to do that. Second, there's a lot of effort cross-industry. Industries are collaborating together. You spoke to one. We're doing a lot more to try and see how do we accelerate startups in this space. Denmark has done a lot in terms of innovation hubs, supporting tech startups. In fact, you have one in Bangalore. Do you want to talk about that, and what has been your experience from it?
In Denmark, we live of our capabilities to generate new ideas and innovation. We live of a talent pool of students being able to think out of the box, so to say. But we are in dire need for international collaboration partners in doing so and in order to scale it. And it is true, Rita, that now I'm a career diplomat and we have embassies and consulate generals around the world. But we needed something more specific, something, a tool or representation where we could actually engage with the hotspots and ecosystems outside in the world. And of course, we have one here in India as well. We've had it for years. We have an innovation center in Denmark in Bangalore because India is an important partner to Denmark. It's an important partner for our exports, but it has been an even more important partner to us in a geopolitical context, in a security policy context. And what we do at our innovation centers, we sort of bring together or connect innovation and ideas from Denmark and Bangalore. I think some of this, when it comes to startups, that needs a little institutional or government nurturing, so to say. You need to do some facilitation, do some programs, bring them out there, get the introductions done. In India, we are specifically interested in the development of the energy sector, the development of the renewable energy. We have formed a hydrogen alliance that we have great expectations for. And we hope that with the skills from Denmark and the scalability in this magnificent country, that we can do some great partnerships going forward.
Talking of skilling, you said skills from Denmark. That brings me to a different topic. Related topic, which is skilling, right? Because all of this requires very different skills. There was a recent WEF Accenture report which said just in 5 countries, including India, there'll be 32.6 million new green jobs that'll come in the next 5 years, right? And we're talking about at both ends of the scale. You're going to have the in construction, big one, as you retrofit buildings, as you build new buildings, right? We're going to have higher end skills that are needed. We're going to have skills that are needed at the intersection of technology and climate science, intersection of chemistry and technology. We're going to need a lot of all that, and there has to be an urgent effort for all of us to collaborate and build those skills for the future. Any thoughts from either of you, whoever wants to go first, on what, if anything, are you doing, or anything that could be done? I know I just threw this because you said skills from Denmark.
So we are discussing the theme of digitalization, and as I love what digital tools can do for us, and I prefer myself to be digital by default. But that being said, I insist on the need of human capital. And call me old-fashioned, but I do believe that we still need skilled workforce going forward. But we have a task in front of us. Everything from vocational training, the way we do our university degrees, and we need to get sort of more hands-on experience, you can say, in our workforce, because we will be assisted by digital technologies for a lot of the work. And that's the transformation that we need to take on now. And I'm happy to be quoted as old-fashioned, saying that we still need skilled labor going forward, and there's not bots or anything else that would solve all of it for me. Maybe I'll be back in 10 years and change my quote.
No, it'll be humans plus machines. So yes. You're right, it's not going to replace humans. We're just going to have different kinds of jobs being done, that's all. At least that's my belief. I don't want to be replaced by a robo.
I actually think, I think, Lina, that the truth of what you say is some of what I think is most encouraging about this space. Look, if something is going to be truly sustainable, it has to work at every level. Yes, it needs to save the planet, but guess what? It needs to lift people up. And it needs to make sense for profit and economics. So just on your point, and I shared a little bit earlier, the diversity of skill sets. So Johnson Controls has been in India for 30 years now. In terms of that cooperation, our global centers of excellence on the engineering side for the hardware is here in India. And also our global centers of excellence on the software side is here in India. I do think in terms of skills and scale, by the way, one of the unique things about India is unlike the rest of the world where 80% of the buildings that will be standing in 2050 are already standing, in India, 50% of the buildings that will be standing in 2030 are yet to be built. What an opportunity. I heard the PM yesterday talking about smart cities. Absolutely. You see what India has done in putting great brain power to work in the solar industry, now hugely captured that from an export point of view. Let's invent that safe, smart, sustainable building and export that to the world from India because the world needs it. And Lina, to your point, that's going to be an all-inclusive set of skills that are needed. Yesterday, I met everybody from our youngest software engineers who are building our OpenBlue digital platform to a plumber who came to tell me that he could help make our operating equipment more efficient and hugely slice our embedded carbon because all of his copper is non-primary, secondary recycled copper. So we need the plumber in and the software engineer, and it's going to take that entire village to grab this opportunity that we have in sustainable buildings.
Yep, and it's not just the sustainable buildings. India actually has a huge opportunity to lead in many different areas in the sustainability space. I mean, you talked about solar, so energy, buildings, agri-tech, etc. We have massive opportunity. And just to put a plug for this conference is trying to be sustainable. If you noticed, a lot of the material that's being used is either recyclable or is sustainable. So a huge shout out to the NASScom team. Thank you very much for leading the way on that one. All right, just last question to you. And I shouldn't close on a down, but it is a down question, which sort of says that a lot of CEOs are concerned that with the geopolitical, current geopolitical environment, there isn't a receiving ground for meeting the ESG targets, that we're going to fall well short behind. And I know that you've been here talking to the Indian government to try and see what collaborations we can do. So any final closing thoughts on that? Because this is not going to work without collaboration across.
As an open economy, living of our export, I truly reckon the geopolitical challenges companies are facing right now. But ladies and gentlemen, we still need to cut on our CO2 footprint, and governments can set ambitions, countries can push, and we try to do our part in our climate diplomacy work and engage with other countries. But I think my last comment to the audience here today would be that we can only succeed in that if businesses also engage with ideas, technologies, and the scalability that you have also represented here in the room and in India. And I hope that we will see more of those sort of public-private partnerships going forward in order to succeed in cutting our CO2 emissions.
All right, with that, I'm going to close this. Thank you both very much. My key takeaways from this were, one, we are in a climate emergency, so time to act is now. Second, collaboration is key. We're all going to have to collaborate to get this going. And third, technology is the way forward. Thank you very much.
For more interesting content, like, comment, and subscribe to our NASScom YouTube channel.